Your Creative Push, episode 127.
If you're putting it out there and you're trying, good or bad, I mean, it's a big thing to put yourself out there, and you should.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Joshua Harker. Joshua is an American artist considered a pioneer and visionary in 3D printed art and sculpture. His series of unmakeable, technically complex tangles is credited as the first to break the design and manufacturing threshold of possibility. And Josh, can we start there? Because for a layperson like me who's kind of dumb when it comes to this stuff, can you explain exactly what it is that you do with your 3D printed art?
Yeah, I can. Thanks for having me, young man.
Of course.
Talking about this stuff. So specifically, the tangles that you're talking about, they're kind of, I consider the kind of most significant thing I've done regarding 3D printing. They may not be I've done a bunch of skulls and other things that got a lot of attention, but the tangles are what brought me to the medium and what got me using it, and what this, design and manufacturability threshold, what that actually is just kind of this line in the sand that was always there that we couldn't get beyond with just all our techniques and processes and the technology we've had up until now. So, the organic complexity of these things, everything from just concepting to actually designing them, let alone actually making one, and then on top of that, reproducing it in any fashion. You just could not do it. You couldn't do it with the technology and the paradigm as it was before 3D printing and, CAD, modeling softwares. So, that's what brought me into all that technology, and the medium was trying to do these things that I had been drawing for a long while. And, on a tangent, I had kind of started working with 3D printing in a commercial industrial designed aspect as it started to enter that field and being used for prototyping. So I saw what it could do, and I had ideas right away and just stuck with it as things matured, the technology and the software that, is used to design things. And made these tangles, which again, broke this threshold, these first forms to go beyond what could ever be made before. And it's not that they do something that couldn't be done before as far as functionality. I mean, they're art, but it is, again, strictly that geometry, being able to make something that you couldn't design it, you couldn't build it any other way. And being the first to, kind of step through that, again, I've always considered that kind of the most significant thing I've done with all that technology.
And what was the reception like? How did people react whenever you did kind of break that threshold?
It's mixed, it's, I don't think anybody was nearly as excited as I was. I mean, I knew what it was specifically. And so a lot of folks in the industry and, in design and who are used to, building things, and particularly in the 3D printing industry, they were pretty excited about it. They understood what it was that I was doing and kind of how outside of, the box it was as far as design and what had been done before, but they didn't really understand the art of it or anything. I mean, it was really kind of looked at more as, how can we sell a machine with this, with this information, or it was maybe a novelty, I guess, that it had happened and that it mattered. But again, as far as the art, it didn't really ring the bell as loudly as I thought. And then the arts community was, really excited about the pieces for what they were and what I was doing. But they didn't get the technology really at all. And, and there was kind of this, resistance to using a machine, or technology or software or whatever to create art. There's a lot of misunderstanding and confusion about what that was. So, again, I was, really kind of over the moon about what had happened and what I had been trying to do. And, oddly kind of ran into, I don't want to call it resistance, but, again, just kind of misunderstanding or maybe confusion about what it was. So, what was there, though, was a lot of curiosity. So I, been invited, to talk about it quite a bit and try to explain what that is and enlighten people about what, 3D printing can do and what I've done with it and stuff. So it's gotten a lot better over time, but it ended up kind of requiring a bit of effort on my part to educate people about, what it actually was and why it did matter.
Yeah, it's like you like bridged a gap kind of, and that I guess comes with a form of responsibility then too, to kind of be an educator about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, kind of came this ambassadorship as well for, all this, this big buzz and hype and everything that was going on with 3D printing at the time. I guess I kind of squarely fit into that, with that story, but it did, I needed to share it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned some resistances, and that's a big word for this show. We like to talk about, resistances and things that hold people back from creating their art. So is there anything that holds you back, maybe initially when you were first starting out with this, and maybe to this day on kind of a daily basis?
At this point, I'm not really running, an operation with the staff and a large studio or anything. And that was kind of by design. I had founded and built this design development firm, and ran it for 10 years before I sold my partnership out. And was used to having employees and overhead and machinery and all this stuff. And as an artist, I didn't want to deal with that. I mean, all I was doing towards the end there was less design and more, working with clients and managing jobs and stuff. So I wanted to get away with that. So and what all this stuff could do, it allowed me to, to do a lot of this by myself. So that sounds good. But now, I mean, there's so much work that goes with and is involved with, I guess marketing, your pieces and, releasing them, announcements and press releases and, managing the collector, base I've got and getting, shipping pieces out, all this stuff. So if anything, that certainly encroaches in on my time to be creative, just kind of all this other stuff. So I felt like I've kind of been on this cusp for a while of, maybe needing to tread back into that water and bring some more people on who can help and free me up to do, so I can get back to more creative stuff.
Yeah, I have similar experience with the podcast, and I think a lot of people can relate to, when you start out on a creative passion, there's all this other stuff that you didn't really think of that comes into it, all this secretarial work sometimes that is involved. And yeah, that can sometimes, the last thing you want to do is be, sending emails or packing things up to send out for shipping, when you want to be creative. How are you, able to deal with that now? Do you have any advice for people who have, a lot on their plate?
Yeah. I'm dealing with it fine. Again, I feel like I'm moving towards a point where I need to make a call on some stuff and get more people involved. And I've already started to do that in some regards, have people help with some more menial stuff, on the design end of it. I'm pretty lucky. My wife has been, very supportive and helpful with a lot of the just logistics, administrative kind of stuff, shipping and stuff, just kind of, always there to lend a hand, when you need more than, the two you have. I'm sure there's an exception, to this, but, generally speaking, I think it's just part of the territory when you go into this stuff. I mean, if you're lucky, you are doing something that you can handle pretty much all of it, because that's pretty empowering as far as, how far your funds can go and your, having a reliable workforce as far as, you being the one that, is it. So, I mean, that's a good thing, when you can kind of juggle that stuff, but it gets to a point, where it is a lot. So my advice would be like, just realize that, that it's not unique, that it is just kind of part of it. And certainly something you want to set your goal on moving past eventually, so that you can, maintain some kind of, creative priority over your time and the effort that you do have available, but, also just kind of get used to it. It is part of it. And until you get to that point, you kind of just have to suck it up and wear all those hats,
Yeah, exactly. Try to keep all those plates spinning.
Yeah. Well, and it's good too. I mean, you're driving the boat, somebody else isn't making these decisions for you that you don't know about, or, maybe that you don't agree with philosophically. So you don't have all this, decision by consensus going on, that waters everything down. It's all coming from you. So that, it is a lot of, a lot of effort and time that goes into all that stuff.
So can you talk a little bit about your Kickstarter fund?
Sure. I've done 3 of them. They were all successful. The first one, the most successful, and it, really got, was a good way to get some attention. So anyway, I made these tangles. I was doing all this stuff and using, software and doing all these, what seemed like exciting stuff, but I wasn't getting, really the attention or, at the end of the day, the sales you need to make a career out of what I was doing and to pay the bills. So Kickstarter really just started to happen. And I kind of got wind of it. So I checked it out and I thought it'd be a good, you're not out anything. It doesn't cost anything, other than a percentage after you reach a goal. So I thought it'd be a good experiment just to see how it applies to what I was doing, getting the word out and, how people reacted to it as far as, putting art out there through it rather than, because it's really more kind of a techie design that, it's proven to be really strong in those areas, games and stuff like that. But it worked really, really well for what I was doing, relatively speaking. And in using the technology that I do, the 3D printing, I was able to pretty much commit to doing it with no matter what. So, if I would have only had one backer, I could have printed that out and sent it to him. It would have been a big deal. It's not like I had to make all this stuff, every little last piece of it by hand. The design work and the art part of it was done. It was, it was kind of a reproduction process after that, depending on how many supporters there were. So anyway, it was really functional and it worked well. And on a lot of fronts, not only actually, I guess, making sales, the bigger thing was the exposure, getting the word out there and getting my work seen. And it was a good platform to share. And I think people got their head around it right away, what crowdfunding is and, the real power of that. And it's still going it's still going strong, but, now full on, Hollywood actors and actresses are funding their own projects and perfectly well funded, corporations are launching products on Kickstarter because it works that good and, maybe even better than some of the older marketing campaigns and, television commercials and all that kind of stuff that we were so used to for so many years.
Yeah, it's a good way to get support behind something that you want to do if you don't have the funds, for sure. That's the whole point of it, but also it can help to gain exposure too by starting making this like kind of tangible thing that this goal that you want to accomplish and then, posting it up there and seeing what kind of support it can get. It's a really great platform.
Yeah, and you have something to share then too. You've got this kind of
right.
nut that you spent time on putting together this whole project and explanation of what you're trying to do and forces you to kind of think about the bigger picture about what you're trying to do with your work. Again, you've got something that's up there, that's a flag out there that you can send people to go, send them the link and you can promote it. It's definitely a good tool, a lot there to work with. And even if it doesn't work for some people, I argue that it's still productive in the sense that you start thinking like that and that you learn by what didn't work about it. If it didn't work, why didn't it go? Did I do it? Is it a shit video or is, maybe, you need to rethink, what you're saying with your work. It depends on, of course, what you're doing, but, the process of doing it, even if you don't achieve the campaign goal, I still think there's productive rewards from just going through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you talked a little bit before about the kind of secretarial stuff, all the other stuff that comes with it. But are there ever any things that like hold you back as far as your creativity as you're, sitting there on the daily basis, like with things to do and you just maybe don't feel like doing it or anything else like that?
Not so much for me. Discipline, needs to be there. You need to, get to your space, whatever that is, and actually make stuff. So yeah, when you've got all these other tasks going on that pull you from that diminishes that amount of time. But for me, if anything, the problem is I have too much stuff I want to do. So trying to prioritize what I need to do and focus on can be, a problem for me. And, with that, I've kind of found like, if I'm having that issue and I'm having downtime, so to speak, and I hate to call it downtime because I don't look like, I don't want to, turn, the process into, punching a clock kind of thing. But,
right.
When I'm not being productive as prolific as I want to be, I just try to focus on getting anything done, even if it's, off tangent. At least I'm figuring things out and I'm working on stuff and, you never know where that's going to lead. But yeah, if anything, it's just, trying to prioritize what the next thing is I need to be doing. And with that, at least how I work, I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead about, how it fits into all this other stuff I'm doing, right, and how I'm going to get it out there. So, that can get to be a little overwhelming once I open the floodgates on all that stuff. There's all these facets I have to consider in my process. But, the cliche writer's block kind of thing for me is never been too much of a problem. I've got any given time, it feels like 10, 20 years worth of work I could, push out right now if I could,
Yeah. I love it. Well, and I think a really good point that you made there was, if you do kind of go on to a new thing, to make it a productive thing, to make it part of your work and a new avenue to explore as opposed to, checking Facebook or doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
The internet is it's so ridiculously distracting. That's for sure. So I try to stay off that as much as possible. But, again, it's just how it works. I mean, you got to have email is going and stuff. Social media is a funny thing. I mean, I use Facebook. I have an artist page and, it's pretty well populated and it's been a good way to get feedback and kind of, have a relationship, with folks that, like my work and talk to people about that. But it's so casual. I mean, I can't, put much stock in it as far as really expecting to use it as a hard edge, blade in actually selling or anything. I put stuff out there, but, unless I think if you're prepared to spend a lot of money, you can, do advertising and promotion and stuff on there. But as soon as you drop a link on Facebook, Facebook won't show it to nearly anybody unless you pay for it. And I've pretty much put the same post up. I don't know if this is interesting to your audience or not, but one with just an image and, it'll go crazy. I'll get over 1,000 likes and shares and all this stuff. It's everywhere. And the same exact post, but with a link to the image in my website, I'll get like 3 likes on it. It'll only get showed to like, a couple hundred people, period. So, it's really, apparent, what their business model is and how they make their money. So again, as far as using it, it's good to get some feedback and, kind of the chatter of it and all that stuff. But, I try not to go too far down that rabbit hole because it's limited unless you want to, send tons of money to Facebook for advertising. If that works for you, then, that's the necessary thing for that. But yeah, putting stuff up so people can see it. And, kind of having this presence, is not a bad thing. And, but I think it just needs to be taken in stride, what your expectations are out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is actually interesting about the whole Facebook thing and something that I've learned, in trying to promote the podcast. They have this, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like a 20% rule. The image, they won't really share it unless it's, less than 20% text. So, for example, if you have your logo on there, you have to make sure it takes up less than 20% of the image. And like you were saying, so, if it's just an image, it will go, viral perhaps. But if it's a link, it won't. There's actually it's like a checker where you can check the image for the 20% rule. So I'll have that linked in the show notes page. But also I found a trick is to post that image, but then right after you post it in the very first comment, then you share the link, right? And then you can kind of try to ride that wave. But yeah, it's really annoying, and it's so apparent how they're just looking to make money.
Yeah, well, and not to be cheap about it or anything, or whatever. And that's what they do. It's not. You think otherwise. Maybe it's you're a little naive about how that works, but so it's not that I don't expect them to. Because everybody's out there posting stuff and trying, and it would probably just turn into an avalanche of and it already is even, with people paying for it, but just of, links and, and marketing and all that stuff. But, for art, it's kind of a funny thing. Facebook is so enormous. I guess you can, if you're able to kind of cut through it and get, people who are behind your stuff, and that's just, and they follow your page. But in general, anybody using Facebook, all the stuff that's coming through there, and just all the noise, even if you got people interested and even if they see it, for it to actually register or to matter huge in all that clutter and chatter on Facebook between, recipes for hot dog casseroles and, pictures of everybody's kids and stuff. There's just so much on there. So again, I think a decent perspective is just to kind of use it for feedback. And, it's good to, again, keep images of your stuff out there. It's good to be seen and have people kind of know what's going on. And I'm sure there's an exception that stuff always happens, but I just don't think it's some singular path, to fame and fortune, or, as far as running your career off of it. But it's a necessary component. You should have it in your fold in your bag of tools, but the more you can concentrate on just making good work and being productive and continue to push it out in different avenues, I think the better off you are. I think a lot of folks get stuck into, and what I was saying in the beginning, you get stuck in this loop of all the other work that has to happen, and people get into it like they're just constantly sharing their stuff, but they're not making anything new. And I don't know, it's like just social media fodder after a while. So
yeah, it's all about priority. I think you're right. And the number one priority should be, creating your stuff, and, worry about the promotion part of it, after. Like for me, for the podcast, I've never used Instagram before it. But Instagram is just amazing, cause that's where the audience is really, it's visual artists, it's musicians, it's people on there that are, kind of actively sharing. So I would suggest just, don't worry about the promotion, and then, put your stuff up in different places, and then find the one that just feels right, the one where your audience is and they're reacting to it in a positive way, and just stick with that. Don't worry about, posting every link, 3 times a week of what you're up to. And definitely, like you said, worry more about the creation aspect of it than the promotion.
Yeah, agreed.
Josh, this has been really awesome, but it is time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to kind of reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions.
I don't know where to start on that. There's a lot that could be said, but, try not to get, it's really hard to do this because it's your work. It's what you do, especially when you're trying to make that jump and make a living at it. It does matter, but try not to get confused between, who you are and what's special about your work and what you do and what you're trying to share with some kind of value on it, a monetary value. Do it because you love it and because you have to do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Try and figure out all the other stuff, but don't, there's some tough spots, and you don't want to get it too intertwined to where you take these hits on who you are, what you do, based on this process of trying to make a living at it. It's hard to separate those, but, try to keep some kind of distance between the two, while you work at, trying to make a living at what you love, you got to keep it special and have a place, that you do it from that isn't affected by, all that stuff. And the internet can be a pretty brutal place to do anything. So, kudos to you. If you're putting it out there and you're trying, good or bad, it's a big thing to put yourself out there, and you should. But you don't take it too hard when somebody, snaps at you, it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it. It's a tough thing to do. It's a scary thing to do, but if you're doing it, you're doing the thing that you're supposed to do. So,
yeah, you gotta go for it. You got to.
Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Certainly, Youngman. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you can find Josh on his website, which is joshharker.com, JoshHarker.com, or you can find his art and everything we talked about today at yourcreativepush.com/Josh Harker or yourcreativepush.com/127. Josh, thanks again, brother.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
Oh, big thank you to Josh for coming on the show. He brought up a lot of good points in this episode and just really inspiring stuff. But one thing I wanted to touch on was the whole Facebook thing, the whole social media thing. It can be a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming, especially with so many different types of social media and new things coming out every day. If you want to be present in a lot of different places, you really start spreading yourself pretty thin. And I really believe in the advice that we talked about in the episode about, just picking 1 or 2 social medias and really just setting up camp there. It's a much better way to interact with your fans, with the people that connect with your work. If you have to, put your stuff out there in a few different places and kind of see what sticks, see what really resonates with your audience, your potential audience, do that, but then really hone in on one or two to stay at. I'd love to hear your thoughts about, social media, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You can either email me at youngman@yourcreativepush.com, or you can comment right on the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/127. I think it's a really interesting topic because as creative people, we need to communicate, and we live in a time where it's easier than ever to get more eyes on your work, whatever your work is. So it's a really important aspect of the creative process. So it does need to be talked about. But like we were talking about in the episode, make sure you're devoting most of your time to your art, to your creativity, to whatever it is that you're doing. Do that first. Spend all that time doing that and then get to the social media stuff later. But it is still important. And also, if you don't mind, reach out and let me know if that's a kind of thing you'd like to hear more of on the show. I know we talk a lot about, just pushing through resistances and pushing through all that stuff. But if you want to hear more about, social media and just promoting yourself and that kind of stuff, definitely let me know. And I'll definitely try to bring it up more in interviews. You can also head to the show notes page for that discussion. And also, I'll have a link there to that thing I mentioned about Facebook. I don't know if that's interesting to you guys, but that's definitely something that I've learned in trying to promote the podcast, that whole 20% rule. I found out about it when I was trying to pay to promote one of the episodes, and it quickly got taken down because of that 20% rule. And then that got me thinking about, when guests share the post or when I share the post that, it might not be showing up in people's feeds, even though they want to see it when there's too much text. So you can check out that and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. But needless to say, that was the one and only time I've tried to pay for advertising the show, and I think I spent like 20 cents total on my failed advertisement. But maybe I'll get back into that later and let you know how that goes. But thanks again to Josh for coming on the show. I think it's really interesting to be able to talk to all these different people. It's really inspiring to get people from all different kinds of fields, creative fields, and we are all seemingly struggling from the same things. And it makes me feel inspired because we're all kind of in this together, and it's all about pulling each other through. So that's what this podcast is all about, and that's what I love about it. So thanks again, Josh. That is all I got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So please go and get it done. And we will be here for you on Friday if you need the push again. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you then. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.